Good afternoon and welcome to CFJ Live. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Gary Bateman, a former president of the Contract Flooring Association, and in the field that we're going to be looking at today, which is entrance flooring systems, one of the most knowledgeable people that I know. So, Gary, welcome to CFJ Live.
Richard, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you. Now, when I first started in the industry, Gary, entrance flooring systems didn't really exist. It was, shall we put Accoya matting down? And if we do, shall we put it in a mat well? But I understand that things have moved on a lot since then. What can you tell me?
That's true. Youngsters like you, Richard, you see, you haven't got the history. That's the problem. Okay, so I've had about 40 years in this industry and been associated with entrance matting for some time. So years ago, coir matting, coconut matting was a standard thing. And then a company called New Way decided that rigid matting would be quite an interesting option. Instead of putting down these products that would degrade in time, you have a much more robust and enduring product in that sense. And so the whole area of rigid matting started. And that you will see in many large installations, airports, rail stations, offices, etc. But alongside that, not long after, was the introduction of textile matting. Now, that was quite a jump for everybody to move from. You're moving from a rough coconut mat to a solid rigid matting made of aluminium, maybe carpet or rubber inserts, etc., onto what looked like a carpet. So that took a lot of explaining and took a while to establish. And the two prime UK suppliers were Threshold at the time and also Coral. And those two introduced the whole area of textile matting. And so my early days, it was just two companies in the textile side, and now just about everybody makes it or supplies it. So that's the sort of transition. And the reason, very quickly, the reason for the two is that not everybody can accommodate a large rigid mat or want to pay that amount of money, but others want to have a softer finish, but still an effective dirt stopping product. And a textile entrance mat will do that.
That's interesting, because I had to go into one of the large sheds, I won't say which one, to pick up some flooring that I'd been asked to inspect. And I'd made arrangements to go into the depot, into the shop, and it was on a rainy day last week.
Yep.
And as soon as I walked in the door, my feet slipped. And they'd actually got somebody on guard saying, "Oh, be careful," yes, because the floor just inside the door was wet and there was no entrance matting at all. So am I right? There's a lot of opportunity here.
There's a huge opportunity of entrance matting. The correct term, if you're looking at the standards, is now entrance flooring system. And that gives it a little bit more kudos in terms of its name. Entrance flooring systems can be used externally and internally. They can be used as an external standalone system or an external system with an internal system, and the internal system could be made up of maybe 2 or 3 different elements. So it really depends now upon the traffic, the use of the building, the practicality of the area. Is it a new build? Is it a refurb? What is it? As what best goes in? But certainly, if you walk from a wet external into supposedly a dry internal, your thinking process is different. You think outside pavement, it's wet, I need to be careful, but you walk inside, you think your feet are going to connect the same as on the pavement. Not always the case if you've got a smooth concrete or a painted floor, where you actually effectively aqua glide on that floor, which is what you found, Richard. That's where entrance matting comes in to hold back the potential that will come through as people walk in. If it's a wet day, it's wet. If it's a sort of dirty, dusty day, you'll get lots of dirt come in. And the entrance mat there is to hold and retain that soiling to prevent it going in, but also to give you a safe transition.
It sounds like quite a technical area. And looking at Forbo's website, I noticed, and I actually printed it off here, that there's even a training standard issued by the CITB, which suggests that this has become quite a serious technical issue. Now, you very kindly put together a presentation for us to look at this morning. Can you tell me a little bit about what we're about to see?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is a presentation which really tries to encapsulate within 10 minutes, which, if anybody knows me, I can talk for a long time about entrance matting. Okay, but 10 minutes to give you the overview as to why, what legislation there is attached, to make that you should use it, which products to select, a real flavour of what's there, and also just at the end it does say that there's huge potential for flooring contractors. These are not inexpensive products, and so you can make good money on relatively small areas. You can get a very good return. But the best part, I think, is that in fitting an entrance system within a building, you are protecting anyone that goes in and out. I mean, that really makes a big difference in that sense. And if you're talking a public building, it could be you or I, Richard, that could be going into that building, or our family or our friends. And the last thing you want is someone slipping over.
Okay, so we'll go to the presentation in a moment, but first of all, let me just say to those who've tuned in today, the whole point of CFJ Live is for you to have the opportunity to ask any questions of our guests and the companies that are represented here. So as we go through this presentation, if there are questions that spring to mind, type them into the comments box that you'll find on screen, and we will save those questions up, and when we go into our live chat room at the end of the session, we'll be taking your questions with us. So your questions are going to be answered during the course of this program. So let's go to the presentation now.
Thanks very much for attending this short presentation on entrance flooring systems, or EFS as it's often called. This presentation has been kindly written by Gary Bateman, Forbo's Head of Technical Sales and Support, using his knowledge and expertise, having worked in the flooring industry for over 40 years. And as you can see from his bio, there is little that Gary doesn't know about flooring products. This presentation acts as an introduction to the world of entrance flooring systems, why we need them, and how you decide on the right product for your project. So let's start by asking, why do buildings need entrance flooring systems? For a start, there's various legislation from British standards and guidance from the HSE designed to protect building users and occupants. And it is entrance flooring systems that can meet some of these criteria, playing a vital role in supporting the prevention of slips and falls. The fitting of an EFS is also recommended in the WELL building standard, as entrance flooring systems can prevent pollutants entering a building. But with a vast range of EFS products on the market, from highly engineered rigid systems to loose-lay mats, how do you decide what type you should install? The answer is by asking yourself the right questions. Start by asking about the level and type of traffic the building will receive. This will usually indicate if the most suitable product should be a rigid engineered mat, a textile one, or in some circumstances both. If the traffic is mainly light foot traffic, a textile mat will usually suffice. For intensive heavier foot traffic, such as that found in universities, a rigid mat may be more suitable. And finally, for intense traffic locations with heavy or wheeled loads, such as airports or stations, a heavy-duty product is needed. You'll also need to know if the EFS is there primarily to remove moisture or dirt, or both in equal measures, as some EFS products have a specialised function. Just 2 steps on Forbo's Coral Classic, for instance, removes half of the footborne moisture otherwise entering the building. If the entrance is external or not under cover, there are products suitable for use in all weathers. The optimum length of a textile entrance mat is 6 linear metres, but many buildings have compact entrances, and that's why products such as Forbo's Coral Duo have been designed, as they remove up to 95% of dirt and moisture over a shorter distance in just a few steps. Another question would be, what type of entrance door do the building users come through? People entering through a revolving door tend to shuffle their feet as they go around, cleaning the soles of their shoes more effectively. But for buildings with automatic doors, people tend to just stride in, meaning you will need a greater depth of EFS products. When it comes to retail buildings, metal rigid mats can interfere with the security tagging systems, and so choosing a product that's compatible, such as Forbo's Coral Click, is crucial. Also, if the need arises, logos and designs can be put in both rigid and textile EFS products. And if the Matwell configuration allows, many rigid mats are reversible, offering long-term value for money. This example shows the new way TuftyGuard product installed in a school. As we all know, long gone are the days when entrance products were plain coir mats. Now your customers want their reception areas to stand out and make great first impressions with, for example, colourful entrance products such as Coral Welcome. Welcome has already been used by several Premiership football clubs in the Players' Tunnel, with Manchester City choosing the blue velvet option that you can see now. As sustainability is high on the wish list of many of your customers, look for products made with sustainable yarns, such as our Coral brush range made with Econal regenerated yarn, or made from sustainable materials such as our TuftyGuard bamboo mat. Finally, do you prefer a tile installation format? Tiles can be easier to handle, store and fit with both rigid and textile EFS products available. We realise that we've given you a lot to think about in a short time, but our website contains useful technical information and downloads, along with guidance on what to consider when choosing an EFS. And we also have our dedicated EFS customer service team to help you with any queries. So, how can you benefit from EFS products? Well, every job you quote for could also allow you to quote to fit an EFS. When you quote for the interior floor covering of a project, could you also follow up with something like, "And can I ask what you were doing in the entrance area?" You want the interior floor covering you're fitting to stay pristine, and an EFS can help achieve this. Forbo is so confident in our EFS products that we'll give your customer an extra 2-year warranty on the Forbo interior floor covering if you fit Coral at the same time. And if your customer still needs some persuasion, what about the fact that Coral pays for itself within 6 months by reducing the cleaning costs of the interior floors by up to 65%? So hopefully you now understand why buildings need EFS, and although there's quite a lot to consider when choosing an EFS, there's lots of guidance out there, and in reality, every job could be an EFS job. Thanks very much for your time. Gary will be in the chat room after the presentation to answer any questions you may have on entrance flooring systems.
Wow. Thanks very much for that, Gary. All I can say is if that was a précis of the kind of information that's available, I dread to think how much material there is. It sounds a fairly complex area, but let's try and break it down. I noticed that you referred to the tunnel at Manchester City, although we didn't actually get to see that photograph, unfortunately. What's the product that you've put in there, and why specifically that product?
The product went in is a textile matting. It's actually a product called Coral Welcome.
I think I've got that.
Yeah, there you go. Now you'll see between the two samples here that there's a slight variance. That's deliberately done within the length of the product. And it is a sort of designer mat, and you would pick out the fact it's blue. So hence, I think Man City were quite happy with that. It went in because it's practical and it's safe. So it's providing a safe transition from the internal to the external. If there's a slight gradient, then it gives sure-footedness. More importantly, it just stops any of the muck coming back in from the pitch, going down further down the tunnel and into the changing rooms and such like. So it's just a practical finish. It's a little bit design-led, but that's the background to it. But this product can be used as any textile in normal entrances. It just has a bit of a wow to it because of its design.
I'm a bit concerned about all those muddy boots, and that this is going to look pretty dreadful after a season or two at the mouth of the tunnel, which is where everybody's going to see it. Does it need maintenance?
Yeah, all entrance mats need to be maintained. One of the key elements of an entrance flooring system, so this is where I'm going to extend it slightly, if I may. If you look at an entrance flooring system, it's effectively a sophisticated waste bin. So if you imagine a waste bin in an office and you keep throwing balls of paper into it, eventually you reach the top. And then what happens is that the paper you try and throw in just falls out. So you need to empty it. Now it clicks in your head that you need to empty a bin, but an entrance mat is effectively a waste bin. And it's there to be a receptacle for soiling. Now, entrance mats will vary in terms of what they can and can't stop. Some entrance systems have the potential to stop 5 kilograms of dirt per square meter and or 6 litres of water. So if you're looking at the amount of dirt it can hold, yes, very much so, lots of dirt. But you're absolutely right, Richard. They need to be maintained, but the maintenance is not complicated. If you've got the right product, which is a product that offers high friction to the surface but an open construction, then the dirt will go in, but it will easily come out with a vacuum. So your dry dirt will come out. If it's wet soiling, then you need to use a water extraction cleaner on it to simply take out that residual sort of moisture that's in it. Just normal rainwater and such like will dry with airflow. So that they're not complicated to maintain, but yes, they do need to be maintained.
Okay. Well, I did notice a couple of others in the range. So this, I assume this is just a different color, or is there something different about this matting?
That's different. This is what you're holding there is coral brush, and that's a slightly coarser fiber. So you'll find that's particularly in areas where you need just a bit more aggressive action, shall we say. It's very subtle.
See that.
There's just a slight difference in it. And again, you have to look at what's most appropriate. So the blue one that you put up is very, very, very good entrance mat. It's more of a designer type product. If you've got areas where you've got, general dirt, busy areas, turning areas, coral brush works really, really well. It's particularly good at particulate soiling, so dry dirt and such like. And it offers a very aggressive, it's the nearest you'll find to the old coconut mat, for example, which will give that brushy action. But again, what you're holding can hold 5 kilos of dirt per square meter or 6 litres of water.
One of the problems with coir matting is, of course, that you get pile reversal in it very quickly, where the right foot goes in and the other foot comes out. Does this suffer from the same issue? No,
it doesn't. If you look at the ranges that we have, our cut pile ranges, they're effectively multi-directional. So from a walking perspective, wheeling through wheelchairs and such like, it doesn't offer more resistance one way or the other. It means that it sits more like a sort of like an open flower construction with the fibers. So you don't discernibly get a traffic lane. The only traffic lane you will see is if you don't clean it. And you might see a sort of dirt track running down the centre. But that's to do with cleaning, not to do with the pile moving.
Okay. Well, I noticed a couple of other interesting ones in amongst the samples. And this one is called Duo. And it seems that these black stripes are a very different texture to the others.
Yes, we introduced Duo, and you might wonder why we call it Duo, I guess, because it's got 3 different fibers in it. But it's Duo because what we're taking is our Coral Brush and our Coral Classic ranges. So the lighter there is the Coral Classic, the darker is a Coral Brush. In between each of those lines is a very much a scraper yarn, quite a coarse yarn. And what we've done is to introduce very cleverly just a little gap between each of those ribs, so that you get a really good brushing action. They don't sort of fuse together. They actually get that very, very slight gap, but you get a really good brushing action. Now, we would look at a product like this as being an amalgam of all that you need. And if you have an entrance that is restricted in size, so let's say you've only got 2 meters depth to work with, then Coral Duo will be the most effective because it offers 3 types of wiping. So you've got the brush for particulate soiling, you've got the Classic, which is particularly good at moisture and or sticky soiling, and then you've got the coarse fiber to really sort of agitate the soles of the feet. And that's the key with entrance mats, Richard. You need friction onto the soles of the feet to pull the soiling off.
Okay, that's great. Well, I then looked at this one, which seems to be the same thing, but it's in a tile effect construction that I can actually click together if I get the tiles the right way around. I assume this just allows you to create the size of matting that you want.
Yeah, that's a good lead-in, Richard. Thank you. Because Click is its name. It's Coral Click, and you see effectively it's a sort of semi-rigid mat in that sense, but it's particularly easy to use for flooring contractors because it's effectively a mat in a box. So it comes in a box, part made up. Yes, you just clip together the different sections and make the mat. We also do non-textile tiles which go around the edges if you've got to trim, etc. But that can be trimmed into a mat well. Particular advantage of that system is that it's good for security systems, so tagging systems in stores. It has no metal in it whatsoever, but it's quick to put down, can be taken back up again, and the red textile in it is actually coral brush.
Okay, well, that's great. Well, you know, this is, for those of you watching, we just happen to have Forbo products here, and these are illustrating some of the types of entrance flooring systems that you can get. Forbo have given us their time and commitment today, which is great. So I'm happy to just take you through the products that they have to help you to understand. Now, looking at some of the other samples that you've sent to me, some of these start to get very, if I could call it, technical. So this one here is called Neway Connect. It seems to be a series of aluminium extrusions with a variety. I've got several different examples of this, a variety of different inserts. Can you just talk me through this one, Gary?
Yes, certainly. These are quite representative of the industry, as were the textile products in that sense. These are the fairly standard fare for what's called rigid matting. So rigid matting, you would tend to associate with aluminium scraper bars and then inserts. Now the inserts can be varied depending on the structure of the product. So the first one you put up, Connect, you've got on the outer two, you've got coral strips. And the inner one, is that a rubber from there?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually ultra grip rubber. That's a flame retardant rubber. It's particularly good for external. That particular transition that you've got there, we would look at to be the first section of an internal mat. So you would go with the textile, with the rubber, because the rubber sort of agitates a little bit more in terms of heavy particulate dirt, but offers a very, very safe transition. The key thing about the Ultra Grip, for example, is that it's the same in all directions. So if you were to come in an external position, a mat that was that you could come from not only front to back but side to side, because of its construction, it means that you've got surety of foot in all directions. But that's quite helpful. The first one you picked up, Connect, would be called a single-sided rigid system. Because if you flip it round, it's got just foam on the back. Yeah, it's only one-sided. What else you got in your hand there?
Well, that's the same thing, but with three of the rubber treads. Yeah. But I did also get here a very similar looking product in a normal and heavy duty, and that I think you're about to say is reversible. Same on both sides.
That's correct, yes. So this is a reversible matting. Now there's advantages to a reversible matting because obviously you can use both sides. You can interchange sections. If you make the same size modules, this is how a mat well is made up with these systems, because you can't have a large mat well made in one piece. It would be immovable, much too heavy. You have it made into modules. If you make the modules of a consistent size, then you can interchange the modules on a large mat. So if you've got a 6 meter length mat, you could move the modules from the middle to the end or the top. The two that you've got there, the one I'm looking at, which is on your left, that one, okay, yeah. that was the origin of, that's called Neway Tufty Guard, and that was pretty much the first rigid, well, that was the first rigid mat into the marketplace. And you'll see how it's made up. You've got aluminium sections and you've got a rubber interlay between. And you've got the scraper for the aluminium and you've got the wiper for the rubber. This one particularly can go external and internal, and that's called Tufty Guard Flame. Now, the other sample you have, little story. May I give you a little story, Richard? Just a little story on this. This is called Tuftegard HD. Very, very quickly. This was made not because we want to use more aluminium, but because we were asked to produce a heavy-duty mat for the old Safeway supermarkets. Now that shows my age, but some of the Morrisons and such like are now Safeway supermarkets. They took them over. What they were doing at that time, Safeway were trafficking heavy pallets across the mats, and what was happening was the mats were bending. So we produced the HD section for that. That's been taken up by a number of main end users, including Network Rail. Network Rail have used it in a lot of mainline stations, Manchester, Piccadilly, Euston, etc. It's very, very robust, and you can put heavy weights across it. It's also quite smooth as a rigid system. So even to hospitals, areas where there might be people with back injuries and such like, it's very good to traverse across. So all of these systems that you're showing, Richard, are rigid matting that has to be custom made. Now, they're either custom made in the factory or they're custom made on site, or custom shaped on site, I should say. So these are not mats to cut with a Stanley knife and off you go. So they are more specialist. And the second or the following video that you have is all about the training, the CITB training on entrance flooring systems, which embraces rigid, modular, which is the Coral Click, and also textile. If you look at textile, that's like fitting a carpet. Okay, so that's like a carpet fitting exercise. That fits under BS 5325 because it's a textile product. It's a fully bonded product, but that's a textile product. Relatively straightforward to put on the floor. The rigid needed a bit more thought process. You can either order from manufacturers direct to the size, cut to the size, or you can fit it on site. The training course that we do for CITB is to give a skill to work with rigid matting and shape it on site.
Okay, well, we'll come on to that in a moment, Gary, and thanks for that. I just wanted very quickly, for those who are watching today, to remind them that the big event is coming. And that's on Thursday, the 1st of July. We have the CFJ Expo live, which will be a format not unlike this, but the main stage is going to be based at the Fitter Training Centre in Loughborough. And there's a whole program of live demonstrations of all sorts of aspects of flooring. But alongside that, we're going to have a lot of manufacturers. I've seen a list already of those that are on board with us. Manufacturers who will have their own online spaces that you can break out to at any time you want. And it's going to be a packed afternoon into the early evening program of information and useful resources for anybody working in the flooring industry. So encourage you to book into that. It doesn't cost anything to attend. And if there are any manufacturers watching who are perhaps a little bit hesitant, can I encourage you to come on board as well? Because this is going to be a fantastic event and people are going to be able to participate from their own offices or even their armchairs and learn more that's going to help them in their day-to-day work. I did look at one more, Gary, but looking at this now, it starts to get quite technical, and I'm quite keen for us to learn about how this will be installed. So you mentioned that we've got a video coming now. Can you tell me who's going to be on it and what are we going to see?
Yes, certainly. It's a video that's put together by two of my team. So Ron Mell and Steve Donegani are technical support managers for Forbo Flooring, and part of their responsibility is to run the training centre at Telford. Telford is where we manufacture our New Way matting, so it's embedded within the factory, the training centre. They have over 80 years experience between them on rigid entrance systems, so they have both made it, fitted it, and now train people on how to do that. They're very hands-on guys. They're very, very knowledgeable. They put this presentation together themselves, so it's a mixture of Steve and Ron, but they come with a huge amount of credibility. They are approved CITB trainers. They've got a professional qualification in training, and they've been doing this training for over 20 years now.
That's fantastic. Well, let's go over to that video now, and let me just remind you, if you have any questions, put them in the comments box, and after this presentation, you'll come back to us, and then we'll be going into our chat room.
Hello, my name is Ron Mail, and along with my colleague Steve Donegani, we will be presenting to you a short 10-minute micro session on our CITB approved training course, which is all about installing entrance flooring systems.
We're going to talk about the relationship of these organisations to the acronyms on this slide. CITB, Construction Industry Training Board, CSCS, Construction Skills Certification Scheme, EFS, Entrance Flooring Systems, and the Forbo CITB training course, and how it all came about. But first, let's look at a brief description of the organisations in this listing.
In 2017 and 2018, CITB decided to review all their current training standards for all construction trades, and as a result, certain standards were removed. It was found that there was no official training qualification associated to entrance flooring systems, and as a result, Forbo Flooring, working in conjunction with the CFA and fitter, created a new training standard which was approved by CITB in December 2017.
This standard was the first part of 50 new standards that were introduced in recognition of the specialist nature of this sector of the flooring industry. The new CITB approved training was based on our original New Way matting installation course that we have been running since 1999. The Forbo run course relating to this training standard is called Entrance Matting and Matwell Frame Installation, which is part of the CITB standards for all construction activity that takes place on sites throughout the UK. This standard outlines what the course covers and can be found on Forbo and CITB websites.
As there was no CITB approved training course when CSCS stopped issuing the CRO Construction Related Occupation card, this meant that specialist matting contractors lost the ability to gain access to UK building sites. Now that Forbo's new training course is CITB approved and recognised by the CSCS as an NVQ Level 2 qualification, it now meets the criteria for a blue skilled worker card, which are valid for 5 years. This enables specialist contractors to gain access to UK building sites.
The CITB training is over 4 days and is the link between the trade of rigid matting installers and a recognised qualification to allow for the application of a specific card to fit rigid entrance matting and Matwell frames, as long as the applicant has also completed and passed a CSCS health and safety and environmental test.
There were quite a few organisations that were in discussion with CITB about trade recognised training courses and course suppliers. Forbo had to become a CITB ATO, approved training organisation, before we could officially do this training. The training course is based around practical working with sections of rigid matting, modular matting and Matwell frames.
You can see in the photos the difference between the tools required to fit rigid matting and traditional floor laying. Our course is focused specifically on rigid matting, which is more of an engineering product, using bandsaws, jigsaws, grinders and special hand tools. Therefore, the tool requirements and skill set are different to the general floor layer.
Training course dates and availability are available to view on the CITB website. Delegates can apply for training by completing a pre-registration document, which is available on both the CITB and Forbo website. Pre-registration documents should be completed in advance of the course start date and be submitted back to Forbo along with payment. Forbo will confirm the payment and issue a confirmation along with a course information pack. CITB offer a grant towards the training course to its members.
This shows Ron on the left and me, Steve, on the right. Together we've clocked up over 80 years service with the business and in the industry. Since 1999 we've been running training courses and we've trained hundreds of installers in the UK and beyond in the art of fitting Forbo's New Way rigid entrance matting. If you're thinking of attending a course at Forbo's dedicated training facility, we will look forward to seeing you.
This is our purpose-built mezzanine training school, which was extended and revamped in 2017, which coincided with the new CITB training course. You can see in the first photo it has a recessed mat wall frame incorporated into the floor, replicating a revolving door and an outer area. Trainees get to install a rigid entrance mat into this mat wall just like they would on site.
The next couple of slides show actual training courses in action. You can see Ron on the right discussing the early part of the training course workpiece with one of the trainees. As you can see, the course is open to all. Before this, Ron will have demonstrated to the trainees what they are learning about at this part of the course.
This shows the sort of tools that are used on the course for certain alterations, so you can see the need to be competent with hand tools ahead of attending the training course. The course consists of approximately 90% on practical exercise and 10% on theory, which relates to site conditions and requirements.
Later in the course, me, Steve Donegany, discussing a trainee's progress on a curved section of matting and giving ongoing feedback and advice.
The drawing on the left shows some shapes that trainees create on the training course. The rigid matting used is approximately 50 centimeters by 50 centimeters, the size of a carpet tile. The shape on the top left is how we start the course, with straight cuts. Top right is angled cuts, bottom left curve cuts, bottom right awkward cuts. As you can see, the shapes get more difficult as the course progresses. The photo on the right represents a finished matwell that is like the shape that the trainees create in the matwell floor of the training school.
The course has a final practical test, photo on the left, and a multiple choice questionnaire. The right hand form is the percentage marking sheet we use for the course marking at the end of training. You can see that 80% of the mark is for the practical part of the course and 20% of the mark is for the questionnaire test. The course pass mark is 80% and above, but they will fail if they get 79% or less.
On successful completion of the course, the trainee will receive via email a certificate in PDF format with a unique training reference number. This certificate is valid for 3 years. When applying for a Blue Skilled Worker card, this PDF certificate will need to be uploaded onto the CSCS website. Only people attending and passing the entrance matting and mat wall framing course will be allowed a CSCS Blue Skilled Worker card, allowing them onto UK sites.
In summary, what we have covered. The course is open to all who want to apply for a Blue Skilled Workers card for entrance matting and matwell frame installation. There is now a course that allows you access and gives a qualification that shows you are trained. The details on how to apply and current costs are on this slide. We do recommend that you have some basic knowledge of working with hand tools and understanding floor work. This Blue Skills card will be needed if you want to install rigid entrance flooring systems, even if you have already done the Floor Layers Blue Skill card training.
Thank you very much for listening, and remember, you can do a Q&A session with Steve and myself in the chat room at the end.
That's great. Well, thanks to Ron and Steve for putting that together for us. And Gary, I know that they're waiting for us in the chat room to answer our questions. I was going to say to answer our questions and answers. They'll answer our questions. I believe we're going to be joined by somebody else as well. So who else are we going to meet?
Yeah, I asked Craig Thornhill. Now, Craig is part of the technical team now. He's been with us for a couple of years, but he's been with Forbo for some time. A majority of that time, he's worked in the New Way sales desk. So he's a processing expert. So if anybody had any questions about map planning, module size, anything to do with that, he's the man. So hence we're getting Craig on board.
That's great. Well, just before we go to the chat room, let me remind you of our next event, which is on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, where we're going to be looking at adhesives. Mm-hmm. That's a huge subject, and we're going to try and get as much information to you during that program as we possibly can. Now, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to click on Sessions and then choose the Q&A live, and you can join me and Ron and Steve and Craig in the chat room. See you in a moment. Now we're being joined by everybody for our live Q&As, and let me just introduce to you in no particular order, but Gary, who you've already seen, Gary Bateman, and also Ron Mail and Steve Donigani, who are the trainers. So welcome to you. They closed our main session with some talk about the training that's available. And also we've been joined now by Craig Thornhill. So welcome to you, Craig. And if any of you have questions, I'm talking to the audience now, that you'd like us to consider, in addition to those that we already have here, please pop them in the chat and we will ask them to the relevant members of our panel. Craig, could I start with you? Yep. During the session, Gary was talking about how when you have a bigger entrance floor system, you would split it up into modules. So what sort of sizes are we talking about, and how would you go about ordering that?
I would say the average panel size is about 2.5 meters by about 500 mil front to back. So 2.5 meters width, and then about 500 mil back. So over 3 meters, you would need a split in it. So we can push to 3 meters if needed, but you would need a split with a T-bar, splitting the left to right of the mat, which is going across the doors, and then moving into the building, you would have roughly, it's about 500 multiples of 500 mil to make up a full-size mat.
Okay, and would the contractor actually order those as individual modules? Would you be aware that this was part of a much bigger system?
Yeah, so the contractor would order it as a whole mat. So, for example, 2 meters by 2 meters, and then our specialised customer service team would split that down for the contractor and just let them know that it will be arriving in X number of panels. So a 2 meter by 2 meter mat would more than likely be in 4 panels, 4 modules.
Okay. Let's move on to Ron. And thanks for giving us an insight into the training courses. Now, I know you said in the presentation that this is not a job for a utility knife, that there are some fairly specialized tools. The ones that I saw were still fairly common contractors' tools, so jigsaws and so on. Are there particularly specialized tools that we didn't see? And how would a contractor get hold of them?
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Richard. Yes, I would say 95% of the tools that we actually use on the training course are available in most DIY stores or builders merchants. And at the end of the course, we do actually give all the delegates a document with all the tools that they will actually need to to fit EFS systems. However, yes, there are certain tools, probably just 3 or 4 tools, which you would have to buy direct from us, as we actually have to make them on our site because they're just not available in any stores. And that's primarily the hand bender, which is designed for the wired matting systems to actually bend the wires. So that's quite a tool which you cannot buy anywhere. We make it in-house. And then there's a bend screwdriver, which we call a bend screwdriver, which resembles what it says, a bend screwdriver, which is again used on the training course to split the mats and open up the anatomy of the mats where the rubber meets the aluminium scraper profile. And there's a flat knife which we use. You can probably buy that from DIY stores, but we do supply it, and that's for slicing the actual lengths of rubber. So yeah, there are probably 3 or 4 tools which you need, and they can be bought in the same process as ordering and buying the mats through our customer services up at Ripley.
Okay, well, I'm looking at these samples that Gary got sent to me in time for today. There is a lot of obviously aluminium profiles which will cut fairly easily, but also these seem to be linked together by wires. So I assume that they're some kind of steel, which could challenge some attempts to cut. Perhaps I direct this question to Steve. You say in the presentation that you can get some fairly complex shapes out of this. It would concern me if you start to cut through these steel wires that are holding them together, that you might start to get separation problems. Is that the case?
Yeah, well, that's the reason for the course. The course actually shows everybody how to safely fix the components back together once they've been cut through. As Ron was explaining there, you've got various systems. You've got wired systems, you've got clip together systems, you've got others that you looked at the click system for Coral, which has got no aluminium or metal in it, so that would be quite easy to do all the alterations. But like you say, with the rigid systems where there's aluminium wires, clips, etc. in them, then there is a little bit of extra knowledge required, and that's basically what this course covers, if you like, for sorting out alterations from a rectangle to another shape.
Okay, because I know, there are lots of contractors who might look at this and think, well, that should be fairly easy to sort out with the tools I've got. But there's obviously, from your perspective, there's a lot that they can learn on the training course that would mean they would be much better advised to go on the course. What would happen
is, as you said, if you cut straight through all those wires that hold the integrity of the product together, all you've got is a load of components in a mat well, and that can become dangerous over time. So it could become a health and safety risk. So hence the training is to show them how to tie all those components together to make it a safe and fit for purpose installation.
Okay, Gary, can I move back to you now? We've seen in the presentations about the British standard. I made a note of it here. It's BS 7953, and it's dated 1999. Now, that's nearly as old as me. Is that standard current? Is there work going on to update it? What can you tell us?
It hasn't been updated. It was put together under the auspices of the BTTG, the testing house, Wire testing house in Leeds. They chaired the meetings, and we had a number of representatives from the industry at that time. Now, some of those manufacturers no longer exist. I mean, that's just how things change. But it was an attempt to try to get some sort of sensible linking of all the different elements of entrance matting into one place. So it was like, well, why do you need an entrance mat? What's the benefit of an entrance mat? How should it be used, etc. Fundamentally, it hasn't really changed in terms of the 1999, or if it was 2021, the basic information would still be there. I think the only bit that might change is the list of product types may alter slightly, but pretty much it encapsulates everything that is current in that area. It's not a definitive British standard in the sense it doesn't tell you exactly what to do, but it does give you good guidance, and it does mention the three prime reasons for entrance systems is to reduce slip on the internal floor, is to protect the environment beyond, and guys, what's the last one? Who can remember the last one on my team here? Slip, save the appearance of the floor inside, and
Be cleanable, isn't it?
Cleanable, absolutely. I like to test people, Richard. Sorry, but it is, okay. And if you look at it, you've got one which is the health and safety thing, which is the slipping part, and the other two are cost savings, and those cost savings tend to fit with the end user of the building. But 7953 is probably one of the least read British standards, but it's actually a really good British standard. And in the Forbo literature, you will find that quoted in places. So for me, it's a very it's a very necessary British standard to understand.
Okay, Ron, Elaine Impey has just put a question on the chat here, and if there's anybody else with questions, please put them down. But the question is, are the courses running at the minute due to the pandemic? And if I can add a supplemental to that, if they're not, is there a place where any contractor can go for more information?
Thanks for the question, Elaine. That's a very good question, and unfortunately, no, the courses are not running at the moment due to current travel restrictions and the lockdown that's in place at the moment. Unfortunately, we're not able to run them at the moment, and also there's issues of people coming into the factory from outside of the actual Forbo factory, the technicians themselves. So unfortunately, no, they're not. You will be the first to know when they are up and running, but again, we're being guided by all the same as everyone else on the government guidelines. Who can help you and assist you? I'd certainly think if you have a guy and he needs training up, then the CSCS would be a good point to give them a call. I believe that they may be doing some sort of card which you could use at the moment, and while the pandemic's on, just to get people onto sites. But that would be your first point of call to actually find out.
Okay, thanks for that, Ron. Craig, let me come back to you if I may, because you're dealing with, or you have been dealing with, a lot of the order processing. And one of the things that Gary has hinted at is that although we call it an entrance flooring system, it doesn't have to be confined to the entrance of the building. So where else in the building have you seen people ordering matting for?
Entrances and exits to toilets that are internal. So one of the cases of that was a large airport in Saudi Arabia had entrances and exits in entrance mats in exits and entrances to toilets. So even the rigid entrances as well had the to the entrance of the toilet, and then also in reception areas and crossovers. So you've got crossover tunnels from building to building as well have been input in places like that as well.
Yeah. If you want us to add on a bit more, Richard.
Okay. Go on then. Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, talking about other places like shopping centres where you're coming from a car park into a centre, there's places like that are not necessarily outside, but it could be there for a reason of the soiling from the moving vehicles from inside the building. Or a perfect example would be a showroom of a car dealership, showroom to a workshop, or workshop to a car showroom, to stop the dirt coming from the workshop into the showroom. Ideal place for something like an EFS.
Oh, thanks for that, Steve. Because I was going to come to you with the next question anyway. Obviously, Gary and all of you on our panel today work for Forbo. If I came on one of your courses, would I only be able to fit New Way and Forbo products, or is it a generic course that would help me to fit even some other people's?
Well, a lot of the competitors' products are very similar to the Forbo brand products, so it is a generic course. So the course is set up as a generic course. Unfortunately, the course is actually run at a Forbo site. We need basic material course, so we use the facility and the products from Forbo to do all the trading. But like I say, it is a generic course. The majority of the competitors' products that are out there in the field match up to what the Forbo produce. So the products that you showed earlier when you're speaking to Gary, the rigid systems, most manufacturers have got very similar systems to that within their portfolio. So the skills are able to be gleaned on the training course. Obviously, it will be down to the individual manufacturer as to whether they accept your training, which is a CITB grant approved or CITB training course. There are grants related to that. But it is a generic course, and it does allow you to do other people's products, as long as the manufacturer of that product is happy for you to be working in there with their products.
Okay, thanks for that. Craig, let me come to you with a question now. From your experience of people ordering products, what's the most common mistake that people should know to avoid?
I think as a general flooring contractor that's not had much experience in fitting entrance mats, obviously the direction of travel is possibly the biggest issue that you can get. So obviously you want to try and walk against the ribs and not with the ribs. So especially if you've got multiple entrances to one building, it is always better to either have a multi-directional mat, so you are at least at some point walking against the ribs and not with the ribs. So that's possibly one of the biggest areas that you do have to explain to people with this product.
Would it make sense, and this has just come to me, would it make sense if you're ordering modules to go into a bigger mat well to make sure that they're not square, but that they're rectangular, so nobody can put them back the wrong way?
Most of them would be rectangular. You will get in some cases tessellated tiles in bigger multi-area, the multi-entrance area. So if you've got people coming in from all sides of the building, you could have tessellated tiles, but again, you would be walking against the ribs at some point. So, but yeah, mostly they are rectangular mats.
Okay, that's really helpful. Well, look, I know I haven't exhausted all my questions, and we certainly dealt with those that have come up on the chat, but I want to thank all of you on the panel for taking the time out to share your presentations, and also to take these questions and answers and give us all this helpful information. I'm going to round the event off now, and for those of you who are watching, let me just remind you, our next CFJ Live event is about adhesives, and it's on the 23rd of February. It's the day before my birthday, so I won't forget it. And I look forward to seeing you there. and of course the CFJ Live Expo, which is coming on the 1st of July, a Thursday, starting at 2 o'clock, where we've got a huge event that's still being planned for you. So please register for that, and we look forward to seeing you there as well. But for now, thanks to everybody who's participated today. Thanks for joining us and for watching. And all I'm going to ask you to do now is to log out, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the 23rd of February. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, thanks. Bye.